So I just had a really interesting failure occur while continuing to work on the front end setup for this car. And I have to say, I'm impressed that at the part that broke. So it's a fitting, not, just take a look at this. The banjo fitting just fatigue cracked as I was trying to torque this thing in. At first it took way too many turns, and I was wondering, okay, well, that feels weird, like it's getting too easy to, like it's taking too many turns to torque this thing down, and it's only 30 foot-pounds. And so I backed it out and thought maybe, okay, something's goofed with the line. Let's first off check the threads on the caliper to make sure we're not pulling the threads out of that, because that's going to be an expensive fix. And pulled the banjo bolt out, and the caliper was fine, the threads were fine, nothing boogered up or disgusting looking. So went back to go torque this thing in, and boop, just snapped. That oh crap feeling, you know, when your torque wrench just suddenly gets really too easy to turn. And I thought, yeah, I just pull all the threads out of this caliper and now the caliper's trashed. But no, this is what happened. And the funny part is this piece right here just threaded right out. So I guess I need to get with LMR and be like, hey guys, you want to send me a new bolt, please? Because this is holding me up now, and yeah, this is going to go on the shelf of shame for sure. So needless to say, we're at a work stoppage, and that sucks. But you know, we're going to salvage this day and get done what we can get done. I've still got to bend up the rear lines for the new soft line setup. So I guess, you know, it's not fair to say we're at a total work stoppage. We're just done on that corner. You know, we can't progress it any further until we get hardware. So I've reached out to LMR. I'm not going to hear anything back from them until Monday probably, because today's Saturday and they're closed. So hopefully they can give me a new bolt. In the meantime, I'm going to try to see if I can't find something, you know, whether it's at a dealership, you know, anything, start thinking of cars that have Brembo brakes, and okay, well, maybe we can track down a banjo bolt that'll work and keep the ball rolling. But, you know, the fact is we still got plenty of other work to do. I still got to get this master cylinder switched out and the booster switched out. So it's not like we're at a total work stoppage, but it just sucks. But we'll get through it. All right, so these are our brake line tools for bending. You can tell I've used these before. Pretty familiar with them. You'll think got these at Harbor Freight. So it's real easy and simple type of setup. So what we're going to do is make sure that this hose, or rather line, comes down. We're going to try and fabricate it that way to mate up over here at that bracket where the soft line comes in. So we got a lot of material we got to make up for. We may not be able to avoid you know, cutting and reflaring, but we're at least going to try. So here goes. Let's see how that looks. I think we've successfully used up all our material without having to cut anything. We're pretty much right where we need to be. A little bit of manipulation, and I think that this will work just fine. Might have to pull that some, but overall I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. Let's just hope this whole thing goes in where it needs to go. That'll be the ultimate determining factor, and watch it be something stupid like, oh, this you know, this thread doesn't match this new fitting. I swear, if this fitting is too big for these lines, I'm going to lose my mind. as fate would have it. Yeah, the stainless lines are different in the rear too. So, despite the efforts to rebend, reuse those lines, and avoid having to cut them for, we're gonna have to cut them and put new fittings. So, thank goodness we have the tools. We got a pipe cutter. We've got, obviously the hand flaring tools, which I'm not wild about, but I've got the capability to do double flared. So, I guess we're gonna do another how-to. Okay, so these are your basic tools you're going to need for cutting, flaring, and reshaping, which we're not going to need to reshape this time around because we've already got our line going in the direction it needs to go. All we need to do is change out this fitting here. So we're going to have to cut off that piece of our double flare there, clean that edge up, and re-flare it. So I've got a real basic setup here, got everything off of Harbor Freight, and it's not, in my luck, been the best kit. It works, it'll do a job, but yeah, it does the job. We'll just leave it at that. But this kit can be used to make good quality lines. What matters is prep, making sure you have a perfectly straight, level, clean cut, and that you deburr that line entirely in order to make sure you get a good, clean sealing surface on that flare. And we're going to show you how to do that. So I've got our hand cutter here. So what you're going to want to do is make sure your part's supported, okay? And you're going to go clockwise, counterclockwise, doesn't matter, but just make sure you stay in the same direction. And the goal here, you want to just gently and slowly turn that piece just to keep pressure, because as you are cutting and you're taking away material, you do have to keep this adjusted. And that's going to be what makes a good, clean cut. Usually I'd say, every full rotation, check it, give it another little snug. Little snugging. That's all you're looking for. So, I know I just did two, making myself a liar. But you can see we're starting to break through. So, there we go. So note, we have a little bit of a radius in that sense. So the next step is going to be to file that flat, deburr it, and then sand it smooth. So step number 1 in this part of the process: old fitting off, new fitting on. Simple as that. Let's not leave that off anymore, because the worst thing you can do is go and re-flare a piece and be like, where's my fitting? And trust me, it's happened to everybody. But just from a practice standpoint, put your fitting on there now. And one other added measure of defense that we're going to do, and this is a good little trick I learned in the military. It's tape. Tape is your friend, at least until it comes time to being done with the job. But the piece is on there. We know it's not going anywhere, at least for now, as long as the brake fluid doesn't just eat it away. So I want to talk about deburring. These hand cutters come with this deburr tool, built into it. And you can use that, to kind of break the edging a little bit of your part. I'm not always as keen on them, just because it is kind of a crude tool. It'll work, it'll break the edge, but again, works if you're in a pinch. And luckily this is a pretty clean cut, so there's not a lot to deburr. But now we're still going to have to go through, sand this joker down, sand the other ending of it down, because again, you need a polished, good clean surface for this thing when it mates to that fitting. So next up to sand it. So using a piece of 120 grit sandpaper, take your part, Make sure you're perpendicular to your work surface. Just kind of gently get a few passes, and again, these are soft lines, so it's not going to take much. What you're looking for is to make it perfectly flat. So that's pretty close. But one thing you can do, a good indicator that you have a good flat surface, is anytime you've been sanding something, it takes that shine off the material, dulls the surface. You'll be able to look and see if there are any kind of inconsistencies. Yeah, look at that. So it's pretty good clean surface. So alright, so now you can see we have our double flaring tool set up, we have our arbor, and rule of thumb is that you want the amount of material sticking out here to be equal to what your arbor is. There are other mathematical ways to come to that number, but that's just kind of a quick reference way you can do this. So maneuver your ram. Start threading it down. Haven't had to do this in a couple of years. Let's see if I still got it. Alright, so far so good. Now the double flaring part. I'm a little rusty, but I think overall this is going to work. Do a little bit of cleanup on it. And we got a little bit of a lip edge there because of this cheap tool. We'll take some sandpaper or a file, clean that edge up, and as expected, there's one at 180 out from that. Clean that edge up. But overall, what we're looking for is to make sure that our hole and our flare, everything's centered up. And I'd say that we have that. Alright, so moment of truth. Although the real moment of truth is going to be when we actually push fluid to this thing and see if it actually has seated, holds up, etc. Finger tight install it first. Dang, there's a bunch of fluid over here. We'll have to clean that up. Get it good, and like I said, finger tight for starters. And a little bit of, yeah, see, now when we had to cut that flare, we've lost some of that movement, so we're just going to be a little forcibly gentle here. Luckily we got a piece of wood to try to help with reshaping these lines a little bit. Just gently. I know that I said earlier, no, don't bend it by hand. You're going to run the risk of flat spotting it, but we're really not that far off from where we were needing to be. And I think we are good to go. There we go. Okay. Make sure we get our tool here and start snugging this joker down. Tell it's about lunchtime on a Saturday because my hands are trembling right now. Something I was able to do better about in my 20s. Go all day, all night working on the car, not eat. But man, I tell you what, the older you get, the less you can do that, it feels like. Alright, so we really won't know that this thing's seated up properly until we put fluid and go to bleed out this corner. But for now, we're in the right place. So, the next step is going to be to do the other side. We're going to have to make a slight adjustment on this little guy right here. I think that's going to give us the direction we need. Come on. What we're looking to do is get this line to kick out a little bit further forward. Not much, just enough. And again, keeping in mind, we do have to throw a rear end cover back on here. We don't want to bend lines back that far and potentially obstruct the rear end. So let's readjust this. See how we're lining up now. Better. There we go. Alright, check our clearances out. So, even though two different design thoughts, maybe one day if I'm feeling bored, I'll go back and redo that line and just make it a straight shot. Or rather, you know what I mean. At least make it look somewhat uniform to this one, even though I do kind of like the thought of having the lines behind the axles. But overall, we're good.